Something like 70% of our planet is covered in water. And for as long as we've been around, the worlds that exist just beneath the surface have totally captivated the human imagination. In a lot of ways, they're just as mysterious and unexplored as outer space. So, yeah, it's really no surprise that societies all over the globe have asked the exact same question. What's really down there? What powerful, mysterious, and maybe even dangerous beings are living in those depths we can't quite see into? I bet you've heard of some of them. Off the coast of Norway, sailors were terrified of the kraken, whose giant tentacles could drag ships to the bottom. In Japan, you had the umibozu, this shadowy giant that would just capsize boats. And in Australia, the bunyip was said to haunt swamps and, well, eat anyone who got too close. You see the theme here, right? A real sense of danger. Okay, but let's bring it closer to home, because it turns out a really similar and really powerful tradition existed right here in North America. For thousands of years before colonists ever showed up, indigenous peoples had their own stories about a formidable creature that ruled the watery underworld. This was a being of immense power, a creature of, well, a lot of contradictions. And it was one of the most important figures in the entire ancient Native American cosmos. Its name? The Underwater Panther. Okay, so to really get this creature, we first have to wrap our heads around the universe it lived in. This isn't just some scary story about a monster in a lake. No, it's about cosmic balance. It's about a whole worldview that gave structure to, well, everything. So for a lot of ancient Native American groups, especially over in the eastern woodlands, they saw the cosmos as having three distinct layers. You had the above world up top, the sky realm. In the middle, you had this world, where we live. And then below it all was the beneath world, this huge, watery underworld. And here's where it gets really interesting. These realms were governed by opposing forces. The above world, that was the domain of the thunderbird, a massive, powerful bird spirit. And its counterpart, the ruler of the watery beneath world, was the underwater panther. Think of them as cosmic rivals, right? A perfect balance of power, holding the universe together. So how in the world do we know all this? I mean, these stories weren't written down in books. Instead, they were made real, carved into artifacts, and even built right into the landscape itself. Archaeologists have been piecing this amazing story together for decades from these ancient clues. And we're talking ancient here. The first really clear images of the panther pop up around 200 BC, during what's called the Hopewell period. Then it evolves, getting literally shaped into the earth as huge mounds. And finally, during the Mississippian period, you see this explosion of its image on all sorts of just incredible artifacts. Okay, so let's look at how they actually showed this belief. This right here is one of the earliest known examples, a shell carving from that Hopewell period. And it perfectly illustrates that whole cosmic opposition thing we were just talking about. You can see the panther figure on one side staring down the thunderbird, its celestial rival. This isn't just a cool drawing of an animal. This is basically a diagram of the entire universe. Fast forward a few centuries, and this belief becomes literally monumental. During the late woodland period, people built thousands of these massive earthworks shaped like animals. They're called effigy mounds. Now get this. This is the really cool part. Over 90% of the mounds that were shaped like panthers were built in lowlands, right next to rivers and lakes. The actual doorways to the underworld it was supposed to rule. How cool is that? And by the time we get to the Mississippian period, the craftsmanship is just, wow, it's stunning. This is a boat stone, and it's carved from jasper. Just look at the detail there, that powerful, cat-like form, the feeling of movement. This tells you right away, this wasn't some minor folktale. This was a being of central importance, and it was worthy of this incredible artistry. So we've seen the physical evidence, but what about the stories themselves? Who was the underwater panther? Well, this is where it gets really fascinating, because its identity is this amazing mix of features, and it's all about these deep, powerful contradictions. So if you look across different tribal stories, you see a few key features pop up again and again. It always has the body of a big cat, like a cougar or a lynx. It almost always has horns, which was a common symbol of spiritual power. Its tail is long, kind of serpent-like, and sometimes it's even shown with wings or spines. It's like they took the most powerful parts of different animals and mashed them all together into one super creature. So check this out. In 1673, a French explorer, Jacques Marquette, he actually saw a massive painting of a version of this creature on a cliff overlooking the Mississippi River. And the way he described it, man, it is haunting. He talked about this beast called the Piasa, with deer-like horns, red eyes, and a tiger's beard. His account gives us this vivid, first-hand peek into just how terrifying this being could look. The Ojibwe people, for instance, they call this being Mississippi. It translates to the Great Lynx. And for them, Mississippi was the super powerful ruler of the underworld who controlled all the other creatures in it. He could decide to give fish to hunters or hold them back, which, made him an absolutely critical figure for their survival. Okay, so this is the absolute key, this dual nature. The underwater panther was deeply feared. People said its thrashing tail could whip up storms and create whirlpools that would just pull swimmers and boats right down to their deaths. But, and this is a big but, it wasn't just pure evil. If you approached it with the right respect, with offerings and ceremony, it could also be this incredible source of protective power. So this incredibly powerful, complicated being, it didn't just fade away into history. Not at all. Its story and its image have held on for centuries, and they continue to have meaning and influence culture right up to this very day. In fact, contemporary Native artists are still drawing on the power of the underwater panther today. This amazing piece is by the Anishinaabe artist Blake DeBossage, and he was actually inspired to create it after his brother had a near-drowning experience, which is just this really powerful modern connection back to the panther's ancient link with the dangers of water. And you still see its image on really important cultural objects today. You can find it on medicine bags, on ceremonial clubs, and in really intricate beadwork. And in these cases, it's representing that other side of its nature. Not the danger, but the spiritual power, the protection you can get if you show it respect. The legacy of the panther has soaked so deeply into the culture of the Great Lakes region that sometimes it pops up in the most unexpected places. Yup, a craft brewery in Wisconsin. They named one of their beers after the underwater panther. And look, it's fun, it's modern, but what's amazing is how much of the original story they actually kept. Just listen to the description on the can. It calls the panther a malevolent beast that needs to be appeased for safe passage. And it warns you to pacify it lest it pull you under. I mean, how wild is that? Thousands of years later, even on a beer label, the absolute core of the myth is perfectly preserved. A being of immense power and potential danger that demands your respect. It really just goes to show you, right? The landscapes all around us are just layered with these incredible stories we might not even see. The underwater panther reminds us that for thousands of years, people looked at the very same rivers and lakes we see today and saw them as doorways to a whole other world. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What ancient stories does your landscape hold?